Mr. Lobo here at Times Square for the Sleepless Knights podcast. We are ready to light up our jumbo scoreboard. As you know, our primary goal is 1,074 listeners on Patreon. And thanks to your monthly support, our total number of patrons comes to... maybe the sign's broken.
Maybe they don't know that you can pledge monthly now. I mean, for only $4 a month, you can support 4 episodes of the show.
And $8 a month gets you segment 5, a whole extra show segment made just for them. And we have a whole bunch of items in tiered plan, including the producer credits and sticker club and more.
Patrons also get to hear the show a week ahead of everyone else.
People, as you know, the Sleepless Knights podcast, hosted by Mr. Lobo of Cinema Insomnia and that pantsless producer over here, Paul Sanders of BESTOW TV, is weird, fun, experimental, obtuse, and thought-provoking. If quality programs mean something to each of you and you enjoy being a fly on the wall for our 3 a.m. conversations, please support the show monthly on Patreon. Take out your phones right now. Patreon.com/sleeplessnightspodcast for $4 or more a month and help us reach our goal. That's patreon.com/SLEEPLESKNIGHTS Now that's only one D in podcast, even though we still emphasize the I.
Hey, where's everyone going?
They're all going home to sign up with us on Patreon.
Yeah, sure.
A warm and excited thank you for all of our Patreon supporters. Our associate producers for tonight are Anita Rivnik and Scott Hewer. Spin Master Scott. All systems go.
Attention, Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
You're not dreaming. You're listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Lobo. And floating out in space, once again, is that pantsless producer of BESTOW TV, producer of this podcast as well, of course, Paul Sanders. Paul Sanders, or Can You Read Me? Come in. This is Mr. Lobo.
Yeah, I got you.
You sound a little forlorn. Everything okay out there?
Well, you know, there's a saying that says don't engage the trolls, and I totally get why you don't engage the trolls.
Wow, there must be a magical place out there in outer space. There's actual trolls?
Well, no, the internet trolls.
Oh, internet troll. I didn't know they could use computers. That's interesting. So, you've got trolls bothering you on the internet.
Yeah.
Is this in relationship to, because we talked a little bit about getting into arguments on the internet last time.
Mm-hmm.
Is this kind of connected to all that?
This is definitely connected about it, because there was one particular aspect from Wonder Woman, and I think it was just shortly thereafter when we were done recording the episode. Somebody, of course, shared the Forbes magazine on a site that's dedicated towards film production for like us indie people. And you know, it's like, you know, it was just beating the drum of this poor guy that Steve Trevor takes over. This poor guy. And I decided that I was going to be the person that took the other angle. And I was going to say some of the stuff that we said. I said some of the stuff that we said in the podcast. And there was a few things that we never said in the podcast that kind of came to light where it's like, they're upset with Steve Trevor being taken over, but they're absolutely okay with nuclear weapons coming out of nowhere, just being drummed up out of nowhere. Rivers drying up because they were wished so. Walls coming out of nowhere. People starving. People fearing nuclear holocaust. But let's worry about Steve Trevor and the body that he took over. And pretty much they came back and said that I support rape in a family picture. So
boy.
That was the end of that group. That was the end of that person. Blocked it, removed myself, and I will try to remember the motto of "Do not engage the trolls," because I don't understand. Like, where does this rape thing come from?
That's a person who's just trying to start a fight, from go, and I think too that this is kind of like a counter, where we're just trying to hurt each other because somebody hurt us, and I think that in this case, if I were to try to diagnose this situation, I would think it would be someone who is something that they liked got canceled, or something that they, or they got criticized for liking something for being sexist, or James Bond for being rapey, or something like that. And then they thought, okay, well, here's this, female-driven superhero movie. We're going to take the other angle on that and kind of give people a dose of their own medicine and say, well, look, she's, it's implied that she's sleeping with this guy who is, whose body is taken over. And so that's essentially rape and
right.
blah,
And
blah, blah.
I don't get that anyway, because I don't think, I'll have to rewatch it, but I'm pretty sure how the scene plays out is that they slept together, but he stayed up and he was eating ice cream and drinking coffee and was testing out the new body and everything. And it was implied towards the end of the scene that he wanted to make out with her. And she said, not while you're inhabiting this other body. So there was nothing there that implied rape. There's nothing there that screamed like, oh, well, she took advantage of this guy.
She was having struggles with it all along anyway, which is why she renounced the wish. Ultimately, she even though she kind of had a battle with herself, and we all have battles with ourselves. The rationale, her original rationale was, how come I don't get to, I have to be the hero all the time. I have to sacrifice all the time. When do I get what I want? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And, she struggled through that. When she came out the other side, it's like, no, I have to do what's best. I have to do what's best for the world. I have to do what's best for my conscience. I have to do what's best for Steve, what's best for me, what's best for everything. And to just renounce this wish and,
right. And I mean, even Steve told her, he's like, I'm already dead, so it doesn't matter to him.
Yeah, so,
But everybody's hung up on this fact where it's like, oh, well, she forced him into all these battles and stuff. And it's like, well, no, Steve chose to go there. Like, Steve's in control of that body. Steve, as far as I'm concerned, when she says, I see you as Steve, he's essentially Steve. He's not this other guy. And everybody's like hung up on that he's in the battle, and when he comes back into existence, he's going to try to figure out where all these bruises are, why he's in the middle of nowhere, what's going on with this. And I'm like, yeah, but also when his conscious returns, he's in the middle of a nuclear holocaust. Like, there are atomic bombs heading your way. I think that is the least of his concerns.
He's not going to have any bruises or anything, because everything just, when the wishes are renounced, everything just goes back. Everything just went back the way it was. Mm-hmm. Plus it's a damn comic book story. Right. You're going to put that kind of subtext. If you got to go that far to pull that subtext out of there, that is not the purpose of that scene. Is to be some sort of like, I don't know what is the reverse of something that is what's that word for men who hate women? Not masochistic.
Male chauvinist?
Male chauvinist, yeah. A male chauvinist, but there's also I can't think of the word. But anyhow, we'll find it in the break. But
right.
But what's the reverse of that? I don't know. I just, I'm again, these are fantasy movies. not everything is, movies have murder in them. That doesn't mean that we're advocating murder. Characters make bad decisions. Characters are put through situations, we're supposed to watch that, digest it, and make our own assumptions and conclusions, and not shame other people for enjoying certain movies or whatever. I don't know. We just stopped talking about it.
The number one rule is you're not allowed to like anything. So
don't yuck someone else's yum.
That needs to be on a shirt.
Yes. Don't do it. And I think
I just feel like people have been watching. I think a whole ton of people just watched a totally different movie than I did. Yeah. And, like I said, some people go in with their arms folded trying to find something to not like about it because they don't want to like it for some reason or another. Again, we talked about Wonder Woman in depth in the last episode, so we don't want to have that same tread that same thing again. Well, good. Let's talk about Mando instead.
Mandalorian, though, is really interesting because I think it is interesting that they and I don't know, did I mention last time that they basically have to write 2 stories at once? I think we did talk about that, right?
I don't know. Doesn't sound familiar.
They were saying that the magic formula is that they basically are writing 2 stories at once, where they're writing something that is for new fans coming in, who are unfamiliar with the material. Mm-hmm. And the second story they're telling is for the fans who've been there all along. And so they're basically telling a story for 2 very distinct audiences intertwined with each other.
Interesting.
And that way you're always bringing in someone new. It's the thing you were saying is that every podcast is someone's favorite podcast. Or right. I guess Stan Lee said that.
Was it Stan Lee? I thought it was Hulk Hogan. Wasn't that the last person?
Yeah, Hulk Hogan always says every podcast is somebody's first.
No, you got to say it like Hogan. Everybody's podcast is their first podcast, brother. I'm the genie.
Oh, please. Yeah, perfect. That is a
24-inch pythons. I'm the genie.
Yeah, great. That's
okay.
Beautiful.
Nailed it. If you close your eyes, you can almost see it, right?
Yeah, I close my eyes and for a lot of reasons.
Close your eyes and hold back the barf.
Close my ears. Close my mouth to hold back the barf. But I think, gosh, now I'm so frazzled by that.
Poor kitty is sick.
We're not recording that right now.
Okay.
Either.
All right.
I think what's really interesting, the Mandalorian, is that it does satisfy the hardcore Star Wars fans to an extent. Obviously, there's some trolls there too.
Right.
There's a lot of people who say that is too fan servicey or what have you. But it is interesting, though. I thought it was really funny when I was watching The Mandalorian, and they've already said this too, is when people are like, "Oh, well, you won't understand this episode unless you watch these 3 cartoons and this Clone Wars episode, and read this thing and that thing." And it's like, no, I'll understand it.
Right.
It's not like you can't understand. It's a very, very easy to follow show. You can understand it. Now, does it supply more backstory? Does it enrich and make it more interesting? Does it explain how it ties into other things? Yes, of course it does.
And those other things exist. So if you want to know it, you can go back and look at all that stuff.
Yeah. But it's not like it's such a thing to where, you're somehow your enjoyment of it is invalid because you don't have all this backstory. It's really interesting to me because, like, I'm an OG Star Wars kid. We came in 1977 with Star Wars Episode 4. The whole thing has always been starting from the middle and going sideways. That's how it always is. Mm-hmm. That's how it always has been, is to just, half of it is not knowing whose people's names are till 2 movies later, or what their purpose is, or seeing a character who's off screen for 2 movies for the first time in the 3rd movie. That's the beauty of it.
Watch them build up that character only to die off in the next movie.
It's
never reach the potential.
And that's good storytelling too, because your brain always puts it in the right order once you have that new piece of information. And I think it's funny to me where it's like, it's like what, all these stories, these superheroes and adventurers, and it's like, you have to show them being born and finding their powers and how the bad guy becomes the bad guy. And you're spending all this time on backstory and not having adventures. We have so many movies that are only deaths or origins and deaths with nothing in between, because we didn't spend any time on the adventure. And whenever we try to have an adventure, we have the fanboys standing there with their arms full. Oh, that was filler. That was a filler episode. It's like, look, I'm here for the adventure. Mm-hmm. I want them to have a side quest and fight tree people. That's what I'm here for. I want a giant spider to try to eat their ship. I don't know what you're here for, but that's what I'm here for. So, I like the fact that The Mandalorian is kind of classic and episodic, and it's like, okay, this episode has a flavor and a theme, and it has an A, B, and C. This next episode has a different flavor or a different theme and has another A, B, and C, and we get to see those characters go through so many different fun situations. That's entertaining to me, and definitely harkens to old classic television. And I think that's what I'd like to talk about today is classic TV and classic structure,
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, now that we've already talked an hour for Star Wars and Wonder Woman, we'll get that next episode.
And we'll be right back with more Sleepless Nights of Insomnia.
From Kenner's Star Wars collection comes the Stormtrooper, the Sand People, and all 20 action figures, including new Hammerhead, Snaggletooth, and more, each sold separately. And now, Boba Fett, Star Wars villain with his laser rifle. Boba Fett is not yet available in stores, but you can get him free with 4 proofs of purchase from any Star Wars action figures. Details on specially marked packs at participating stores. Offer ends May 31st. Star Wars action figures sold separately from Kenner.
Last week we were talking about Battle of Endor, and I pulled the original trailer off of for one of the commercials.
You're talking about the second Ewok movie.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Did I not say that?
Yeah, you just said Battle for Endor. I'm just clarifying that for people.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I was doing Battle for Endor, and it's been a while. I had the VHS tapes, but it's been a long time since I ever watched them. So I sat there and I watched through the video, and I was actually surprised to see I knew that Mandalorian recycled them, but I didn't know that they originated from Battle for Endor. I thought they came from like the Christmas special or whatever. But those like the lizard mounts, what are they called?
Blurgs.
Excuse you. Yeah. Use a tissue next time. Cover your mouth. It's a little gross.
Yes. So you have to be careful. You don't want to get any blurg on the microphone.
Yeah, when you get blurg down the front of you.
Yes. What is the name of the character that Nick Nolte's character in The Mandalorian?
Oh, shit. Yeah. The Ugnaught.
Yes, the Ugnaught. Wow, we can remember Blurg, but we can't remember the character. I have spoken.
Yes.
Anyhow, he insists that to travel certain terrain, they get on these weird 2-legged lizard things that they ride on, and apparently that was an early sketch concept for the Tauntaun, right, Paul?
Yeah. Yeah, you beat me to it, but yeah, I have a calendar here for 2021 that has all the sketches for it, and Luke is riding on a blurg. he's actually riding on a blurg on an iceberg.
A blurg on a berg.
But yeah, it looks fairly close. It has 2 legs and like very little arms. The mouth is a little bit longer, but yeah, it looks like it's concept from Empire.
That's really interesting because I think it's really beautiful how they leave everything on the resume. They're not ashamed of anything from the past, and they try to incorporate as many abandoned concepts or concepts that were abandoned after the fact, mm-hmm. like the holiday special and the Ewok TV movies. Yeah, I love the fact that they completely just really embrace the entire, not necessarily just for canon's sake, but just just embracing all of the creativity and all of the ideas and all of the dreams and all of the imagination that has gone into this franchise that is, 50 years old, or what, 40, at least 40.
45.
40, yes, 43, I guess. What's the math on that? How old is Star Wars? But
everybody get out your blurg and do the math and figure out.
Yeah, get out your blurgs, everyone.
I mean, if they're bringing everything back around, they brought the blurg from the Ewoks movie. Do you think that they're going to put in the Willow music that they used for the trailer? I thought that was weird that they used the Willow music, but then it kind of fits because they're doing magic and there's all magic stuff in that movie. So I guess they were trying to make the Willow crossover Ewok movie.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Willow cue in one of those episodes when they show the blurgs. Who knows?
Might be.
I mean, there was weird in the one episode with Ahsoka where they kind of brought in the war drums from the Clone Wars cartoon just at the very end. They just brought those drums in just to kind of connect it to, at least that's how I interpreted it, as they're connecting it to the animated series Clone Wars, where they just had a little bit of those drums in there. Yeah, just kind of a little nod, a little something extra.
Probably like her theme. That's kind of tie back to her thing because it's just like if you every time you see Luke, it's the da 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 da.
Yeah, exactly.
Voice cracked a little bit.
Yes, yeah. This is kind of a little bit of I know we're going to get into classic TV, but this is a really interesting thing because everyone is at home right now because of chronic diarrhea and other intergalactic. Unfortunate intergalactic.
Got a little bit of
blurg. You don't want to get blurred.
I got myself the smidge of the blurg.
Yeah. But, Disney, movie theaters right now are kind of in trouble, at least in this country. People are watching streaming. Mandalorian is the #1 show on Disney Plus. They've got 60 million subscribers. And they announce like 10 shows all at once. There's like one with a Boba Fett show and a show with the Captain Thunder Thighs or whatever the wrestler is, and the two X-Wing pilots having cop adventures. And then they've got I don't know, Jar Jar Binks Detective Agency, and I don't know. They're giving everybody a show.
Right. And Marvel's doing the same. So they dropped like 20 shows that night.
20 shows with all of these characters, and I feel like I'm really worried about, like, is it too much of a good thing? I mean, in the old days we had like Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, and obviously one show is popular, you split it off into two shows are popular. Okay, we got Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. What about Mork? Maybe Mork needs a show. Maybe Joni and Chachi need a show. But to do that,
maybe Arnold needs a show.
Arnold never got a show. Potsy never got a show. But to do that all at once, there's this arrogance there that they think that the market will bear that, and somehow that those are all going to be multiplying their success. Like, okay, well, we've got 60 million viewers on Disney Plus because of The Mandalorian. If we have 10 shows that are exactly the same, we'll have 600 million viewers on Disney Plus. And I don't think it works that way. I think it's going to be those same fans trying to watch all those shows. And if a couple of them tank, if whatever, Bib Fortuna Chronicles or, whatever, Jabba the Hutt detective agent, or not detective agency, Jabba the Hutt medical examiner or whatever, I don't know. Whatever.
I think I want to see your movies before I see the Disney ones. New to OSI. Jabba the Hutt, Drug Lord Dreamin'.
Yes.
Electric Boogaloo.
Whatever. Biker Scout Special Victims Unit. Well, I just don't know what, if a couple of those really tank, that could really hurt this whole thing that they're doing. And And it's just like, I don't know if they're doing it because of greed. I don't know if they're doing it because, okay, we're not making movies, so we got to keep all these people working, and we're going to just have as many things in production as possible. Because I mean, right now there aren't a lot of movies in production.
I guess, but I guess like some of them seem like it seems like the Star Wars franchise as a whole, if one fails, there seems to be like a crutch for something else.
Mm-hmm.
So if like say Boba Fett fails or whatever, well maybe he'll just go back to Mando, and that we'll just run it off from there or whatever. Because a lot of the things that I kind of see is like, they did this the Solo movie, and then they were supposed to do an Obi-Wan movie, but then Solo failed, which killed chances of the Solo movie. Or sorry, it killed chances of the Obi-Wan movie rather.
Yeah.
And but then that's one of the things that they announced was that the Obi-Wan was getting its Disney Plus series. And when you read into it, it was like, well, yeah, this was originally going to be the sequel to this was supposed to tie into Solo, but then Solo failed. It was going to be its own movie, but because Solo failed, they're not putting any effort to make it a movie. So now they're putting it on Disney Plus as a limited series. It's supposed to be only X amount of episodes, and then it's over.
Right, and I guess
I kind of feel like it's like, if one thing fails, they might be able to roll it over into something else.
I guess so, but I mean, why announce so many? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that does for them unless they're trying to sell the company.
I guess. I mean, I feel like it's the Marvel thing, where it's like Marvel just announces all the stuff that they're coming out with, and everybody just eats it up. But it kind of, when they announced the Ahsoka movie and they announced the Boba Fett movie, or not, I meant TV series, the Ahsoka series, the Rogue Squadron series, the Boba Fett series. When you look back to the Mando starts reading to me what Avengers 2 started to read like. Uh-huh. And Avengers 2 just read like a 2-hour commercial for all these other properties that were coming out, because when Avengers 2 came out, well, there was supposed to be a Black Panther, and there was supposed to be this thing, and there was supposed to be that thing. So there was all these other movies that were spinning out of that singular movie.
Yeah.
That movie kind of suffers plot-line wise because we have to service all these other branching things to get out there. And when you kind of look back to the Mandalorian, it kind of feels that way, where it's like, well, this is only introduced because we're going to do this, and this is going to be introduced because we're going to do that. And it's probably a small complaint when it comes to me, when it comes to that kind of thing, because I'd be damned where before Mando even dropped, the next season of Mando even dropped, there's like, oh, Boba Fett's coming out in 2021. And it's like, oh, I would have loved to watch the entire season of Mando and learn that Boba Fett was coming out in 2021.
Yeah.
But when you announce that before the first episode even drops, well, then it's like, well, then I know what's going to be in here.
Yeah.
When they announce Ahsoka's getting her own series before Ahsoka even appears in the series,
Yeah.
It's just like that. It's just a bummer when it comes to those kind of things. Where
and maybe some of that is a little less sinister to where, because it takes a long time for them to film these things.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that they're filming with the Boba Fett part for the Mandalorian. You're like, oh, damn, I think we got something here. Mm-hmm. This could be a show. Or the same thing with Ahsoka. They could have went, oh, okay, when people see this is going to catch fire. Right. We better be ready.
I guess the thing with the Boba Fett thing was my understanding was that was what the Mandalorian was supposed to be originally.
Yeah, the Mandalorian was the Boba Fett movie, and then they didn't want that, so then they repurposed that story. My understanding, and you can correct me also,
right?
But
the internet will find you.
repurposed Boba Fett's movie into a TV series about a totally different Mandalorian, and then the Baby Yoda part of it. Baby Yoda's story was actually Rey's original story from the sequel trilogy. So originally, she was going to be a child that was rescued and then raised by, the
Mando.
Who knows, another character.
Okay. Right. And I mean, there's the inverse where I had after seeing Solo, I had no desire of seeing Obi-Wan. And the script was always out there where it's like, oh, it's Obi-Wan, and it's the years where he's on Tatooine and stuff, and he's supposed to be watching over Luke. And I'm like, I have no desire to see this. Like, he's supposed to be in isolation looking over Luke. Like, that's not very exciting to me. I'd rather see like Clone Wars era Obi-Wan. You know, I'd rather see like that story. But then after they announced it, and then they kind of released some of the script details, it was like, huh, you know what? I'm actually on board for this now. I would want to see this because it also takes place post Order 66. Mm-hmm. So the idea behind it is not just him looking over Luke. He's also looking over any other Jedi that are out there and trying to save them as well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's actually kind of an interesting aspect versus him hunkering down and hiding on Tatooine for X amount of years and supposed to be in secret, but then he's having all these adventures anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that makes sense to me. It's like, I'm on board for that. I'd see that.
Yeah, I mean, until you see it, I guess you can't really criticize it, right? I mean, I'll give it a shot unless I feel like the premise is completely offensive. Like I never saw. I saw an interview with Rob Zombie when he was talking about his take on Halloween, and he was saying, well, he's not just a shape; he's a kid who was, had a childhood, and now he's a serial killer. And I'm like, wow, you don't have a grasp on him at all. He's the boogeyman. He is just the shape. That's the character. He's the shape.
Right.
And that's what I would want to see him be. I would want to see him be a phantom and not be, he had a bad upbringing and so now he's a murderer. It's just like
we don't need to rehash episode 1. We don't have to rehash.
I couldn't get past that, so I just didn't go see it. Now, again, I can't really criticize it. I mean, a lot of people like that first Halloween movie, but I know it did turn me off to where I wasn't that interested in seeing it anymore. Look, we're going to honestly try to get on to talking. I guess we are talking about television.
Yeah. But
to talk about classic television.
My Endor was supposed to get us there, and we sidelined again.
Yeah. But that's what's the beauty of the 3 a.m. conversation. It can just go anywhere. So let's go here right now, shall we? The spirit of giving doesn't have to be just for Christmas. If you watched our A Very Merry Unboxing Reboxing Christmas video on YouTube or OSI 74, you saw Mr. Lobo opening one of the best Christmas gifts ever from one of our biggest fans ever, Renee Whaley. Paul and I tried to reach out to Renee after we made that video and had great difficulty. Renee was not in a good place and needed help. We all need help. And starting this fundraiser for her after her years of grassroots support and fan art and guerrilla marketing for us, well, honestly, it seemed like the very least we could do. Renee named the fundraiser Gimme Shelter and added, I would want wild horses to drag me away. Take a moment to read her story and consider helping a fellow sleepless knight who is facing homelessness. Visit our GoFundMe entitled Gimme Shelter, Renee Whaley Faces Homelessness. The short URL is gf.me/u/ZFBZS5, or contact us personally with any questions. We love you, Renee, and we hope this buys you some time. This is why we have whole episodes not talking about Star Wars. Because once Paul and I get on Star Wars, it is like a bad scene, man. I remember, I've had this happen so many times. Paul would come over, and then somehow, somewhere, we'd have that 4-hour Boba Fett conversation. And then I would go into the bathroom like an alcoholic and look at myself in the mirror and go, God damn it, Mr. Lobo. You had that goddamn 4-hour Boba Fett conversation again. We all know it by heart. We both have the same opinions on everything. We just go through the motions and have the same conversation over and over again. I want you to, never do that again. We're not going to do this anymore. We're going to clean ourselves up. We're going to get in a program. We're going to be okay. We're going to take it one day at a time, not talk about Star Wars. Recovered. I used to was a recovered until the Mando came out. I considered myself a recovered Star Wars fan.
Night.
Now
you're relapsed.
Yeah, totally.
You relapsed with your prolapsed lightsaber.
Fell off the wagon and prolapsed my lightsaber.
Well, I mean, I was trying to get to with with the Battle for Endor was that was a TV movie, and how like that was a big deal. Like you saw it once and that was it.
It was an event, and you had to be there.
And it was a sequel to a sequel. Mm-hmm. So you had to be there, 9:00, probably Thanksgiving, to watch the damn thing.
Yes. Yeah, it was. It was definitely an event. And, and even like the Droids cartoon and the Ewoks cartoon, I mean, there wasn't very much Star Wars for a while. So anything like that surfaced, you'd have to be on board with. And there wasn't really the internet also, know? There wasn't any.
The playground, just you and your buddies talking on the playground and the TV guide.
So there was no one really to tell you to watch it or to not watch it, really. I mean, I didn't have that experience. I was an only child, so I didn't have someone saying, oh, you're going to watch the Ewoks movie. I didn't have any real criticism on that.
I saw the first Ewoks movie and I walked out. I was a hater before it was popular. I just got my Barbies and left.
But it is interesting because I feel like, and nowadays I feel like people wouldn't accept something so minimalist as just an Ewok movie. Well, I guess we've kind of come back around with it, right? With all of these TV shows on these very slim premises. But I feel like in those days it was just, I think it was just like, okay, well, this is all we've got, so we're just going to appreciate it. And the market was still primarily children. They weren't that excited of turning on 50-year-olds to these adventure stories.
Well, they were doing that with a lot of things. They were because like the first two G.I. Joe basically seasons, I guess they would be considered like the first two seasons or first two episodes. They were just events. They were just on Thanksgiving. Like the Mass Device was like the first one, and I think the Weather Dominator was the second series.
Yeah, I remember the Weather Dominator one
being on like on a Thursday night at like 9 p.m. Those were your events, and they did the same with Ewoks, and they did the same with I don't know, insert movie here.
Right. And what's weird with those is that, well, with G.I. Joe, they definitely had toys and things that they were always tying in. I mean, the whole thing was a toy line. But I think with the Ewoks, I mean, did they have anything for did they have any toys or anything for Battle for Endor? I don't think they did.
Don't think so. I mean, they're probably just based off of, you're getting the Wicket and because there was only ever three Ewoks that ever came out for Jedi. It was like Wicket and the Sharpa and like one of the other ones.
Chief Chirpa. Wicket. And Logray, the medicine man, I think were the only
were the ones that you would the ones you get.
I think there was one called Tigway.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah,
it might have been 4.
Because I think most of them they came in 2-packs, or was that later?
That must have been later. 'Cause my Ewoks came 1 per pack, and what I would do is I would kind of like swap their hoods around and stuff to make them look like different Ewoks.
Paint a little yellow insignia on their chest so that they have different rankings.
A little yellow dot for a rank on the chest.
I think I had a lot of Ewoks. I think I had a lot of Akbars and Ewoks, come to think of it, and Nadines.
I had 2 of those little tree houses, and I had them late. This is an embarrassing time in my life where I was way too old for it. But because I hated the Ewoks for a while, and then I kind of came back around to like, okay, well, this is the only thing I haven't fully explored. So I had a few of the because I used to build these dioramas, so I had a couple of the play sets, and then I had my own trees that I made, and then I had like the little catapult and the little wing glider. And then I had whatever Ewoks I had, and I had a couple of Scout Walker or an ATST.
Right. Now, why didn't you say ATST?
ATST because it was established at an ATST, and they hadn't reverse engineered AT-AT from ATST like they had, like the young punks today. But we had, Gosh darn it, we're getting stuck on this damn Star Wars stuff, even in our TV conversation.
I tried to get it back, and we still got away.
Yeah, but it's still Star Wars, even though we're talking about the droids cartoon.
I mean, I even tried to push you into G.I. Joe to try to get you that direction.
All right. Earlier in the show, I'm going to go way off rails and see how far away we can get from Star Wars.
All right.
Earlier in the show, before the show, Paul and I were talking about graphic T-shirts or T-shirts with slogans and things on them. When I was a kid, I had a shirt from Welcome Back, Kotter.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't have any of the pictures of the actors. It didn't have John Travolta or, any of the characters from the show. It only had their sayings, their catchphrases. So it went, ooh, 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 which is what the one kid did when he was raising his hand to answer a question. And then, and I've got a note, which is what Epstein would always say. And then, hi there, which is what, was it Washington? I always forgot what that character's name was. And then they had the other character who's Barbarino, who's John Travolta. So it said Barbarino written out on the shirt. And then, what was anyhow, and on. So it's just covered. And then I had a Happy Days one that was very similar, where it had, sit on it and, Fonzie's thing there. And yeah, it's ridiculous. And I did have another shirt that just said Sweat Hogs, and this is like some pretty cheap cashing in on a shirt where you aren't using any of the, none of the characters, there's nothing that anyone on the show would ever really wear. In those days, they didn't really care about that sort of thing, about it being something other than a piece of merchandise. They didn't really think about it really tying into the show really tightly. Something along these same lines, which gets a lot of criticism. Paul, have you ever seen like that Mr. Spock helmet?
With that has the light on it, the red light on it?
Yeah.
On the top of it. I think it just says Spock. But then if you find the original helmet, it's supposed to say police and it has the light on it.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's just like
because they would just repaint and retool old things most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a plastic helmet with a chin strap and a red light on top and an antenna. And they just put Spock across the forehead instead of police, right, or fire department or whatever it is. And, there was a lot of criticism for that. Obviously, because it's something that would be worn on the show. And I'm a nerdy kid, and I remember thinking, well, Spock would never wear something like that.
Then you and I have seen different episodes then, I think.
But, I mean, if you're a kid and you're like, okay, I just want to play Spaceman or whatever, and I'm going to put on this helmet. I think in those days, the stickers...
I can imagine getting in the playground like, wee-oo, wee-oo,
yeah.
wee-oo. I'm Mr. Spock. I'm the genie, too. Wee-oo, wee-oo.
But, I mean, that being said, I mean, it's totally ridiculous. Yeah, it's stupid. But I think, I'm the kind of kid who would probably want to wear a helmet with a flashing light on top. I was probably that nerdy to where I would have wanted to wear that. But I may have resented that it said Spock on it. Maybe I would have wanted it to say Starfleet or something more generic on it so that I could pretend I was having my own adventures with my flashing safety helmet. But I think the thing in those days, though, is that on their part, and I'm just kind of being devil's advocate for the company that making the toys, TV shows, and especially sci-fi shows and stuff like that, most of them lasted like a season or two, tops. I mean, I think the original Star Trek only went like 2.5 seasons or something.
Right. I think it was like in constant,
it was
cancellation.
Constant threat of cancellation, and it was canceled. It wasn't like it just went off the air, went on hiatus. They just canceled that show because the ratings weren't that good. Star Trek wasn't appreciated until much later in syndication. So, and then of course it's become a phenomenon now. So it's hard to look back at, okay, well, here's this, I'm a toy maker, this is flash in the pan TV show. We're going to spend all these time making these like exact molds of all of the ray guns and everything, and then next year we won't be able to use this. Plus, the licensing was probably expensive. This way they only have to license the name of the show. They don't have to also license. They don't have to also license all of the the costumes and the likenesses of the actors. So, for them, it's like, okay, well, I guess kids would like this helmet anyway. And if we slapped, honestly, the producers of the show are probably hoping that the toy will bring promotion to the show versus the other way around, versus the show bringing attention to the toy. Because in those days, I think that, there were, just like there weren't very many TV shows, there weren't very many toys either. So, if something appeared under your Christmas tree and you were a kid who liked sci-fi stuff, that Mr. Spock helmet might make you tune into that show to see if maybe your helmet will show up.
Versus that Mr. Welcome Back Cotter Mego.
Yeah, the Welcome Back Cotter Mego figure, right? And what I think is really interesting about that is that even though you're trying to see, the whole argument is that it's not canon. It's been talked about so much on the internet that it got written into the animated Star Trek series that they have going now on what is that, CBS All Access?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's almost like the thing that we're not allowed to talk about, but the ice cream maker, how that became canon. Right,
exactly. So now that stupid Star Trek helmet is part of Star Trek now. So now it's like, okay, well now it's canon. Now it's so are we still mad about it? Anyway, we'll be right back talking about Star Trek. Welcome back, Carter. Maybe we'll get into All in the Family, Little House on the Prairie,
mashed potatoes.
Mashed potatoes? I didn't know that show. All right, I got to go on the IMDb and look up mashed potatoes, and we'll be right back.
Come on, kid, get your sweater. Let's go. Bye, Mom. Hot water wash. Okay. Cold water wash. Pretty clean. Aw, they didn't look that good. When can I stop kidding myself?
Right now. Out of the future comes all-temperature cheer with the all-temperature clean.
Must have powerful ingredients.
Certainly they're powerful. To give you the best-looking wash your world has seen in hot water, warm, cool, cold, and everything in between.
Terrific. Now that's white.
Cheer gives you a great-looking white in hot water.
And in cold water, that's clean.
Cheer beats even the leading cold water detergent.
Wait till you see my kids tomorrow.
I'll be watching. All-temperature cheer.
Boy, is this stuff clean and in all those temperatures. All temperature.
Please don't sideline the Star Wars. Please don't sideline the Star Wars. Please don't sideline the Star Wars.
All right. I'm not going to sideline to Star Wars, even though we could probably talk about the holiday special, but we won't. We'll resist. 70s television shows were really weird, and it's interesting. Like I think about I had dolls of Welcome Back Kotter and Chips and Starsky and Hutch, and these weren't things that were appealing to children per se. Starsky and Hutch, they go talk to a drug dealer, right? They go or a pimp, right? Huggy Bear, and then they get information from him, and then they bust some drug dealers. That was not really a children's show, but 6-year-olds loved Starsky and Hutch. And then I think of the $6 Million Man. Most of that show was pretty dry. Except for the 5 minutes where he's using his bionic powers. This is just a show about a guy working for the FBI, it's really weird. Some of these fandoms with some of these Emergency. You ever see that show Emergency, Paul?
I can't say that I have.
They're just firemen. Mm-hmm. And they had lunchboxes and toys and dolls and, it's really, I think now everything for kids, I think it's good that things for kids have a fantasy element, but in the 70s, it's really weird because there was so little fantasy material, which is why Star Wars hit so hard.
Right.
You had all these really weird shows that children really liked. I mean, Little House on the Prairie is pretty bleak.
Right. And I only remember Little House on the Prairie because I think it either preceded it or was after the Muppet Show. So you always had to sit through it to just get to that thing that you wanted to see, and it's just like, oh, I don't care. And as soon as you seen the little girl running through the flower field, it's a bop 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 ba da. Yes, the Muppet Show's coming on soon. Let's go.
Yes, yeah, that little ITC logo at the beginning with the red, blue, and green thick shapes flying. And then, the thing would start. Dun, 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 dun. And then, and then the Muppet Show would start. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. If anything, I know the end credits to Little House on the Prairie. Like, I have memorized because that was probably the thing. The end credits to Little House on the Prairie, and I think afterwards, eventually it became Buck Rogers. So it was always the end credits to Buck Rogers because I was always excited that Buck Rogers was coming on and I wanted to see it. And I get so freaking bored that I wouldn't even watch it. And then the end credits be on. I'd be like, yeah! Muppet Show's coming on!
Far beyond my time. Who am I? Where am I? What will I be? Where will I going? And who will I see? I watched that with my dad, and then we went to go see the Buck Rogers movie in the theater, and then they had like these like almost naked ladies laying on the letters of his name in the opening credits.
Very,
like
very James Bondish. Yep.
And I remember just feeling so embarrassed sitting next to my dad with these girls on the screen. It was just miserable. I'm sure I've talked about this before, but it's just one of the most like I felt like I was shrinking into my seat with every and growing in other places. Oh God. So bad. Anyway, but
Little
yeah,
House.
the Hulk. Did you watch the Hulk?
Yeah, I remember the Hulk. I can't name any episodes or name anything aside from the sad Hulk music that I use quite frequently in my works. But yeah, I remember the Hulk.
Yeah, we used that, of course. Aaron edited that into the American Werewolf of the Philippines episode of Cinema Insomnia work because we thought it reminded us of the Hulk in a couple of spots.
And I used to have a cosplayer thing. It was Sad Riker all the time. He would purposely bring the Riker thing because I did it once and it was popular. So every Comic-Con we went to, it was always a Sad Riker thing, and it was just the sad Hulk and Riker just standing there being sad. Oh, and that was it.
And you play the music of the
Hulk.
The
sad Hulk music.
And
underneath.
it would just be Riker from Star Trek: The Next Generation looking
sad.
What's interesting about the Hulk, I think, and this was the format of almost every television show, and it's interesting because I saw a film recently of Rod Serling, who wrote The Twilight Zone, and the other day we could almost do a whole episode about The Twilight Zone, but Dixie and I watched had a marathon and watched a bunch of Twilight Zones, and in preparation for this, I watched a little bit of Rod Serling talking about writing for television, and he was very critical of the TV show The Fugitive. Mm-hmm. He's very critical of the TV show The Fugitive, and he was saying that somebody killed the guy's wife, and he's looking for this one-armed man, but that's just really a device so that he has to constantly be on the run, and he just goes from town to town each week and helps a single mother with a problem in a small town, and then at the end of the episode, there's too much heat, so he's got to move on, and it just rinse repeat the same plot every show, and he couldn't write a show like that because it's just the same characters and the same situations over and over and over again. Whereas with the Twilight Zone, because it was an anthology, even though those are hard to sell to television, he could explore different ideas, different characters, different points of view. And the Hulk was exactly The Fugitive, where it was like, he changes into the Hulk and it causes all of this destruction or whatever. And so he's on the run, because there's also a newspaper reporter who's following him and trying to blame him for some murders or something. So he's on the run. He goes from town to town. He's got this secret that he could turn into this monster, and he's trying to find a cure or a way to fix it or a way to clear his name. And so he just goes from town to town to town. He finds another single mother with another problem. Mm-hmm. He turns into the Hulk in the last 5 minutes of the show. You get that shot of his eye. Oh, yeah. The A-Team had that same
plot
thing too, right? They go to another small town. There'd be another single mother who's getting extorted or whatever her problem is, and they'd help her. And they go to it's not always a single mother. Sometimes it's a little boy. Sometimes it's an old man. But they find a person in a new town, and The Mandalorian even has that a little bit. Shoot! No Star Wars sidelining. No Star Wars sidelining. I'm sorry. Can we strike that from the record?
That show that we can't talk about has a little bit of that. Well, a lot bit of that.
The Knight Rider. Knight Rider is the same formula too. He goes into a town, and the thing he's doing is kind of secretive. They don't really want people to, know about this fantastic car that he's got and everything. So he can't really stay in one place. He's just going to help people in the shadows and then move on.
Wasn't that the plot to Manimal as well? Because it's Second 4, are we just going to name everything that shares the same plot?
I mean, we don't have to name every show that plot. But it is a hardy trope. And again, in nowadays, like I said, I think it would drive people insane because the episodes are so similar. Like Inspector Gadget, I guess, is sort of not that same plot, but every episode's the same, where Inspector Gadget gets put on a mission. Mm-hmm. He goes to the island or wherever the Mad organization is doing their bad guy business. And then he completely fails to fix the problem at all. Penny and Brain secretly with their computer gizmos end up fixing everything. Or maybe he accidentally, foils a bunch of bad guys. Mm-hmm. And then Dr. Claw's plans are ruined. Dr. Claw escapes. Mm-hmm. Chief Queen Bee shows up and says, "Great work, Gadget." Right. And then the next week they send him to another place.
Then he goes, "Go, Gadget arms! I'm the genie."
Honestly, that impression is probably your best. Not that it's a good Don Adams impression.
I thought the Bobcat Goldthwait was the best. Did I just top Bobcat? I mean, that's a pretty low bar.
Top your Bobcat with your Don Adams impression, but or your Inspector Gadget, I guess in this case, same difference. But it is interesting that, how modern audiences don't have a lot of patience for that kind of a show where, you're really there. It's like hearing a favorite song. You're really there because you want something that's tonally similar.
But isn't like Inspector Gadget more so just a knockoff of Get Smart, which is just the same characters? I mean, I guess mine is Penny and Brain, but it's still kind of that similar.
I would
say the bad guy gets away at the end.
I mean, kind of, yeah. I would say Get Smart with a dash of $6 Million Man. If the $6 Million Man and Get Smart had a baby, not that I would want to watch.
Right. It came out as Spaceballs.
But I do think that probably would be the formula there, because you get he's got all these powers,
Right.
And then, of course, he's just an idiot, bumbling secret agent. And really, like in Get Smart's case, I think 99 does all the work.
Right. So she's kind of the Penny in the group.
Yeah. She's the one who's really doing all the work.
You think that the executives at Deke were like, hey, let's make a show like Get Smart, and maybe we can get a Don Adams sound-alike.
Dixie, would you come over here and tell us something? Because Dixie has some insider information on this.
Okay.
On what?
On Inspector Gadget. What were they trying to make when they first made Inspector Gadget?
They were trying to make a Lupin the Third spinoff.
Lupin the Third?
Yeah, it's a Japanese anime.
Japanese anime about what?
about a master thief.
Master thief. So he wasn't even a policeman or anything like that.
Well, it was about his, like, I think it was going to be like Lupin the 13th or Lupin. It was some distant future ancestor of all the characters from Lupin the Third, and they had all these futuristic gizmos, and they might have been fighting crime.
Okay.
But
they were trying to make a show for America?
No. They were trying to make a Japanese show, and they put a bunch of money into it, but the person who wrote the Lupin books in France, they never licensed Lupin, the name Lupin or anything.
Okay, so Lupin is a literary character that they were imitating.
So Lupin, God, how far back do we have to go? But Lupin, the original character, is a thief, master thief in French literature, and then Lupin the Third is a Japanese ancestor.
Yeah.
He's half Japanese,
Descendant.
half French.
A Japanese descendant.
Right, of Lupin. And then
they were going to do a Lupin the 13th or something like that.
Way in the
future. And then the High Council of Human Consumption put a stop to it.
Yeah. And then they're like, well, we already have all these people on this job and we've already been working on this. So they just kind of revamped it, put a new skin on it and made.
Wow. Wow. So a Lupin the Third cartoon was the genesis of Inspector Gadget.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Dixie. Bye. Like the most informative part of the whole podcast comes from just my wife eating ice cream walking through the room.
In the last 3 minutes of the show.
I think Dixie and Miss Mittens just need to do the podcast and stay home next time. Oh, cripes. But yeah, it is interesting how we do kind of forget that this is an industry, and a lot of times it's just about keeping people working, meeting your obligations to your investors. There's so many things behind the scenes that we scratch our heads and go, well, why is it like that? Or why did they choose to do that? I mean, Jesus, we've got that Connor show right now where like they kicked Roseanne Barr off the show and then they're doing this whole show with Dan and all the other characters from Roseanne without Roseanne. That makes no sense at all.
And the genesis of it all was weird anyway, because it was just people wanted that show back. So it came back from out of nowhere, and then Roseanne had to put her foot in her mouth, like as if they were surprised that she was doing that, because she had that problem when the show was originally on the air.
Right, she was always controversial.
She was always controversial, but then this time she got so controversial, it was like, nope, because we live in the day and age, you do something like that, you lose your show, and then they just kind of flipped it.
It's really bizarre, because they did that same thing with that show. You remember the show Valerie? It had the actress who was Rhoda. The actress who was Rhoda, gosh darn it, Harper. Gosh darn it. They did the exact same thing where they kicked Rhoda. They kicked Valerie Harper off the show, and then they just named it Valerie's Family, and then they continued the show without the main character.
Didn't they? They did something like that with the Hogan family too. The Hogans.
Yes.
They killed off the main character or whatever, because wasn't that show was named something else, and then it became the Hogans afterwards.
Maybe are we talking about the same show? Hold on,
maybe.
Can the IMDb help us? I still haven't looked at mashed potatoes.
That was a reference to MASH.
IMDb. Oh, MASH. We didn't. We'll have to talk about MASH.
Yep, that'll have to be in segment 5.
Tell me about MASH in segment 5 and that particular actress from MASH and what her main characteristic was at a convention. Okay, so the show we're looking at is Hogan Family. That might be the Valerie.
Maybe.
That might be Valerie. Not Valerie. God damn it. Hogan Family. Not Hogan's Heroes. That's a comedy about an internment camp.
I mean, it was the Hogan's Heroes, and then something happened with Hogan, and then it became the Hogan Family, and they just changed the plot line so severely.
Oh, this says the Logan Family. That's not it. Is it the Hogan Family?
The Hogan Family. I'm looking at it.
Oh, you're looking at it. More matches.
It started out as a standard family sitcom called Valerie, about a mom juggling the demands of work, 3 boys, and frequent absent airline pilot husband.
Say that 5 times fast. Absent airliner pilot husband.
All right, ready? That 5 times fast. Then after star Valerie Harper had a falling out with the producers, her character is, air quotes, killed off. And enter Sandy Duncan as the live-in aunt and ... Hold on.
Yes.
And surrogate mother figure, which leads to the renaming of the show. First was Valerie's family, and then became the Hogan family.
Oh, so we're both right.
So it was Valerie, then it was Valerie's family, then it was the Hogan family.
Wow. So we went from Valerie to Valerie's family to the Hogan family. And again, I mean, they probably played pretty fast and loose with the canon, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're all the internet trolls. Oh, the Hogan family. It was better when it was Valerie.
Oh, it was a filler episode.
Ah. Where's Baby Yoda in this?
Baby Alf. Where's Baby Alf? So there we go. We've come all the way around back to Star Wars again somehow.
And internet trolls.
And I think we should take that cue to get the hell out of here.
See you in segment 5.
See you in segment 5. May the Force be with you.
You have been listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast, or should we say, pODDcast.
pODDcast.
Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Deadhouse Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo. MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as BESTOW TV, at BESTOW.TV, on YouTube /BESTOW TV, on Twitter at BESTOWPROD, PROD, and on Facebook, BESTOW TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else, and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
patreon.com/sleeplessnightspodcast.
That's
patreon.com/sleeplessnightspodcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Nights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
pODDcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.